All right, good evening, gentlemen. This is the brief route plan brief on our frag that we received for Operation Predator. Obviously, we are at our patrol base right now, and we have received orders to move to this ORP that you see here and ambush the enemy as they move through the kill zone in this quadrant right here. Now, we will start off our journey leaving the patrol base at the starting point, which is just about 10 meters outside the patrol base. So ultimately, we will be starting our trip right outside of the patrol base, and we'll make our first trek going around handrailing this hill that you see here right outside of our patrol base. The reason that we'll be handrailing this and not simply dead reckoning, which would in the long run cut down on time, is because we are going to focus on cutting down on fatigue so that by the time we arrive at the ORP, our soldiers are still ready to fight and ready to ambush the enemy as they move through this kill zone. So the name of the game for this route, our main route, will be to reduce fatigue and get to the objective as safely as possible. So from starting point to checkpoint 1, we have a roughly 850 meter movement where we'll be railing that hill as previously stated. We've got to be careful because obviously, as you can see here, there's no vegetation around our patrol base, providing enemy air assets, if they have any, with a clear image of our men so they can warn their men before we ever even step out of the patrol base. So we will be taking a longer route through this area that is not concealed by the wood line. Once we get to checkpoint 1, however, we are going to dead reckon. We're going to shoot a 77-degree grid azimuth and an 85-degree magnetic azimuth to checkpoint 2, moving about another 850 meters or so. Once we arrive at checkpoint 2, we have to be wary that there is a bend in the road right there, which could be potential key terrain for the enemy, as many ambushes and LDA crossings occur at bends. However, we're going to use this bend in the road strategically to do our LDA crossing. That way we can see what's coming down either side of the road and have plenty of time to react if the enemy does decide to move down this trail, which we, at this point, consider unlikely, which is why we will be moving in a traveling overwatch readiness posture and in the squad column fire team wedge. Once we reach this LDA, however, we will cross in the file only to reform into the wedge on the other side. As we move down, we will plot further azimuths, making movements of about 400 meters to 300 meters in between checkpoints 3, 4, and 5. The reason that we're going back through another non-wooded area, it is quite dangerous when considering enemy air assets. However, we feel as moving through this area will shield us from the civilian buildings that you see in this area right here along this trail, will shield us from this trail itself, and this hill right here will also shield us from enemy observation. Although they're far away, if they were moving down this trail, we would still be masked. Our movement would still be masked. Stealth would remain intact for our ambush as we move across this LDA if the enemy is indeed along this trail as well. And once again, as I previously stated, there are some civilian infrastructure in this area, but again, this hill would protect us if we cross over here. Now, after we move through this area, we're going to cross here near a bridge, a potential key terrain feature, which would be dangerous as the enemy has a higher potential of being there. However, we're going to cross here in order to reduce the time that we will be near streams. As you can see, the alternate route here runs through about 5 streams on its way to checkpoint 8, which would obviously get our soldiers' feet very muddy, very wet, and it's a dangerous situation for fatigue, which we're trying to cut down on, as I said earlier. Because of this, we'll be moving through this area, staying at least 400 meters away from the bridge in the tree line in order to mask our movement again. Once we get to the other side of that stream right there, we will use this hill right here as a backstop, and we're going to further handrail that hill around to checkpoint 6. Checkpoint 6, we have another linear danger area, and once again, we will collapse down from the squad column fire team wedge into just a simple file in order to cross that LDA as safely and as quickly as possible. After we cross that LDA, we will move on to checkpoint 7, and from checkpoint 7, we will plot another azimuth of 114 magnetic to checkpoint 8. Again, we're going to move roughly 500 meters there. So again, this is a very long movement, and this one will be uphill and will be one of the roughest parts of our movement towards the RP. After this, it's a pretty straight shot, about 8 degrees magnetic azimuth. However, we will be moving for about 1,100 meters over some rough terrain. But again, we will be in a lightly wooded area protecting us from enemy aerial observation, and there is a hill here that protects us from observation along this trail if the enemy moved before our intel suggested they would. Once we reach checkpoint 9, we will switch our traveling posture to bounding overwatch as we near the ORP. Now, we expect these last 2 legs to take a much longer time as we will be in a much higher security state as we get closer to this ambush point and closer to this road. So we will be doing bounding overwatch from checkpoint 9 to checkpoint 10, and that is about 300 meters. And then from checkpoint 10 to the RP, we will move very slowly, once again, still in bounding overwatch. But at checkpoint 10, what's good about checkpoint 10 is that we will change how we are moving once again to the squad line fire team wedge. So we will have each squad in a line facing the road in order to prepare for the ambush that we will then hopefully catch the enemy in at this kill zone as we move onto our ORP. And that will be our main route. That concludes the trip through our main route. Obviously, there are very many places where we could potentially be spotted by civilian observation. However, if we stick to the plan here, this area in particular, mountain right here, will cover us from civilian observation along this side, and the crossing in through the trees will again protect us from observation from the bridge. Once again, this hill right here, the reason why we're staying on this side of it and handrailing it will again to protect us from observation along this trail, and we'll be far away enough from this trail so that we cannot be seen. However, if there are enemy aerial reconnaissance planes, helicopters, any aviation assets of theirs in the air, we will then default to our secondary plan, that you see down here and represented by the dotted line, which keeps us in the trees for a much longer period of time, further protecting us from aerial observation. This route down here will take much longer. We will arrive at the RP much later than the original plan, and it will be much more taxing on our soldiers. So it's not ideal as we cross through, as I said earlier, 5 potential streams. However, it would further protect us from enemy aerial observation. That concludes my brief on our route overlay. Yes, thank you, gentlemen, and good luck. How much time was that?